My name is Emma. I'm 24 years old, and right now I'm going through one of the hardest moments of my life. I can't believe I have to do this. But I have to. 'Cause one day, everything changed abruptly. I thought I knew how much my family loved me, but that morning, seeing the fear and hatred in their eyes as they looked at me turned everything upside down. It had only been a few weeks since I found out I was pregnant. I had just started to recover from the shock. Learning about my pregnancy was, in fact, a complicated situation for me. On one hand, I loved my child and approached this new life with joy, but on the other hand, I didn't know how my mom and dad would react. I always thought about my family and sought their approval. Growing up, their love and approval always came first. That's why I waited for that day. That day, I wanted to explain everything. But it turned out to be a day far different from what I had imagined. That day, I found my mom and dad alone at home. My heart was racing. I could barely breathe. As I thought about how to break the news to them, I also tried to understand how hard it would be for me to carry this burden because of their reactions. But somehow I had to do it. I found them with my eyes. My mom was preparing something in the kitchen, and my dad was sitting on the couch in the living room. That moment, I felt something inside me break. My family's attitude toward me and this tiny life might just bring everything to an end. I quickly approached them. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about something," I said, my voice trembling. My voice always trembled like that, but this time it was different. It felt like something inside me was about to explode. My mom looked at me first, then averted her eyes for a few seconds. She took a deep breath. She seemed so normal that I didn't expect such a drastic change. Then, slowly, she said, "Why? Why now?" When I first heard that, it felt like my world shook. Why now? What did that mean? I could only look at my mom in shock. What was I expecting? A congratulations? "We'll help you?" But I didn't hear any of that. Instead, I was met with a cold wall. She had rejected me. My existence was seen as a mistake. That moment I realized, my mom had rejected me in front of all of us. We stayed silent for a while. My dad hadn't said a word. He was always quiet, always watching from the sidelines, but suddenly that silence became more unsettling than ever. He just sat there in the room, watching everything without taking his eyes off my mom and me. It was as if he had decided to simply observe without saying anything. Finally, my dad took a deep breath, stood up, and walked toward me. When he came so close and looked at me, I saw something break inside him. "Emma," he said, his voice cold and harsh, "how could you do this?" That moment, I thought it was the end of everything. That question made me feel like a criminal. How right he was, wasn't he? I was turning their world upside down. With my dreams, my little dream, I was destroying everything they had planned for years. Tears started streaming down my face. But I didn't wipe them away. 'Cause even in that moment, I felt something inside me come to an end. I thought my tears wouldn't mean anything to anyone anymore. My mom, my dad, there was no one left for me. It was as if they hadn't noticed I even existed. Slowly, I said, I'm just living my own life, my voice trembling with every word. I turned to my mom. "I only expected understanding from you," I said. But at that moment, the cold expression on her face didn't change for even a second. She only said, "Emma, this isn't your life, it's our life. Lily's dreams come before everything." That's when I realized how deep things had gone. Lily, my little sister who meant everything to my mom and dad. She was the most precious person in their world. And so I had become nothing but an obstacle. That moment, I lost all the love and trust one had ever received from them. "Lily's dreams," I said, my lips dry. "Do my dreams never matter?" Looking at my mom, looking into her eyes was hard. Yes, she said. Those are your dreams, but as someone who knows you, I have to say this. You shouldn't be in this situation. There should be no obstacles in front of Lily. The moment she said that, the last bit of hope inside me shattered. Hearing that felt like the end of everything. I understood. To them, I was just a mistake, an obstacle, a burden. That day, I realized how different everything in the house had become. Confrontation with my mom and dad wasn't just a blow to me, it had struck them too. But to me, this blow was a turning point in my life. For 2 days, I didn't speak to anyone at home. My mom and dad continued their cold behavior toward me. They made me feel like I was invisible, as if I wasn't even there, while they carried on with their lives. This situation became more unbearable with each passing day. One morning, my mom prepared breakfast without even glancing at me. I was so emotionally drained that waking up in the morning felt like torture. In that moment in the house, next to my mom in my dad's room, I was a stranger. While they were close to each other, I was left in a corner. I truly didn't belong to anyone. No one wanted to see into my heart enough to understand me. "Mom," I said, my voice coming out harsher than I expected, "tell me what I'm supposed to do. If I've disappointed you this much, I need to know. What should I do?" My mom didn't say anything. She averted her eyes and placed the plate she was holding on the kitchen counter. That moment, as she turned her back to me, I felt something inside me begin to rot. 'Cause I could tell my mom had lost her love for me. And the worst part was this: the pain was so deep that it grew a little more each day. After a while, she just mumbled, "You chose this." And in that moment, the look in her eyes erased all the love she had shown me over the years. It was, in a way, a sign that everything was over. No matter how much I had once sought refuge in her, now by her side, I was so alone that every word, every glance made me feel even more isolated. For the next few days, there was only silence in the house. My mom and dad barely spoke to each other. That's when I realized I no longer even knew who I was. I had lost my identity. I was a stranger in my family's eyes, and I had come to accept it. There was an emptiness inside me, as if I were searching for my own existence. If I set aside the love I once received from my mom and dad's eyes, no one truly knew me. Before, when I watched Lily, I used to think about how easily everything flowed in her life, how she always captured everyone's attention. She was always at the center of everything. She was always radiant, always the focus of everyone's gaze. But me? I was never bright enough. I always had to stand behind her. And now this pregnancy had gotten in the way of those shining dreams. My pregnancy seemed like an obstacle to her life. Yes, maybe I should have built my own life, but how could that be possible for me? The guilt in my mom and dad's eyes was constantly weighing on me. And worse yet, the contempt in Lily's eyes. She always saw this situation as a burden. My existence was an obstacle to her. It had always been like that. Lily's smile always drew everyone's focus to her life. Everyone would ask her, "How can you be so perfect?" She effortlessly won our family's love and attention. But me, I never felt that valuable. And in that moment, I began to realize everything. They had abandoned me. I had never truly mattered to them. One evening, when I went to Lily's room, I found her door closed. Despite the dark emotions in my eyes, I knew I had to go in. I knocked on the door and waited for a while. Then I entered. Lily was staring at her computer screen. Something inside me ached. We were so distant from each other. "Lily," I said, my voice struggling to come out, "I need you to tell me something. What do you think? Why did Mom and Dad abandon me?" Lily lifted her head and looked at me. There was a mocking glint in her eyes. But she didn't answer me. A long silence followed, so silent that I almost felt like I wasn't breathing. Finally, she said, "Because of you." "You disappointed me, Emma. It's always because of you." That sentence felt like a summary of why everything had turned out this way. In that moment, I understood how cold the truth was. The contempt in Lily's eyes deepened every pain I felt. My pregnancy seemed to her like an obstacle beyond anything else. She wanted to live her life without any barriers. That morning, nothing had changed again. The exhaustion in my eyes bore the traces of sleepless nights. Pain inside me had enveloped my entire body. But like everything else, I had to suppress this pain too. I had to get used to it. Almost everything in my life had vanished, but I had to survive. 'Cause no one would fight this battle for me. No one would save me. The silence in the house was pulling me in deeper with each passing day. Every moment I spent with my mom and dad was worse than the day before. I felt like a stranger in their eyes. They were just trying to brush things off. My pregnancy had become an invisible burden in the house, one that everyone felt but no one acknowledged. When my family didn't look at me directly, I didn't feel anything either. 'Cause to them, I was now just a mistake, an obstacle. One morning, I was alone in the house again. My mom and dad had left without speaking to each other, as usual. That moment, there was an emptiness in the house. The air felt so stifling that I was suffocating. But I had to do something. I had to find my own identity. This was a struggle I couldn't share with anyone. I thought to myself, I have to prove myself. I don't owe anything to anyone. If I have to achieve something on my own, I should do it alone. If no one will help me, I need to find my own path. But at that moment, I realized how hard everything was. The exhaustion in my eyes followed me like a shadow that had been trailing me for years. On one hand, whenever I heard my mom and dad's voices, a fear started rising within me. But on the other hand, I was so tired that I was willing to do anything to stay away from them. One day, while I was alone in the house, a spark ignited in my mind again. I have to fight my own battle. I didn't want to hold a grudge against anyone, not my mom, my dad, or Lily. But that didn't mean I understood them. Whatever they did to me was their own pain. They had rejected me, but their pain belonged to their lives. My path, however, lay in finding my own identity. I used to think everything was right for them. My family meant everything to me. We would laugh together, eat together, spend time together. But now everything was different. It seemed like my mom and dad didn't want to see me. The foreign look in their eyes estranged me a little more each day. But at the same time, I didn't have any more time to waste on mere survival. I had to build my own survival, my own identity. Lily. She always felt like she deserved the best of everything. And I had always stayed in the background. But this time it was different. No matter how hard Lily tried to stop me from pursuing my dream, I wouldn't back down this time. I had to set aside the fear inside me and those moments when I felt worthless. No one would help me. I had to understand that. 'Cause this was my fight. Through this struggle within myself, I had to find my own identity. One weekend, I was alone in the house again. My mom and dad had gone somewhere else. The atmosphere in the house was stifling as always, but this time something felt different. For a moment, I heard Lily's voice. I noticed the noise coming from the door and saw her walk in. In her eyes, as always, there was a hint of disgust. But this time, something had changed. When Lily lifted her head and looked at me, she was unusually quiet, so much so that I thought how strange the moment felt. She walked quickly and came up to me. She was so close that I could feel her breath. "Emma," she said, and I felt the cold tone in her voice. "Are you really upsetting me? You're ruining my life." Those words were nothing like what I had expected. My eyes filled with tears. But I didn't cry. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Lily," I said, "I have a life too. This isn't just your life, it's mine too. You need to understand that." The expression on Lily's face froze for a moment, but then a smile appeared. "Your life? You've just become more of a burden." That moment, I realized how much her perspective of me had changed. But I had to get used to it now. In that moment, I felt something inside me break. In my life, there was nothing left but this pain. But somehow I had to accept this pain. This pain would help me find my own identity. When I left this family, everything would come to an end. But even so, I had to build my life on my own. Every day at home was becoming more unbearable than the last. It was as if my mom and dad had erased me from their eyes. They didn't approach me in any way. They acted like they were merely acknowledging my existence, but the coldness in their gaze deepened with each passing day. Turmoil inside me, the things I felt, were too complex to put into words. On one hand, there was resentment and anger toward them. On the other hand, I had to fight to survive. I had to find my own path. One morning, I woke up to silence again. But today was different. Something inside me had shifted. For so long, I had been so focused on my mom and dad's behavior toward me that I hadn't noticed the emptiness within myself. But now I was beginning to accept that emptiness. I didn't have to prove anything to anyone in my life. I needed to find my own identity, to start carving my own path. In that moment, I realized that everything my mom and dad had said to me couldn't be true. 'Cause now I was so much more than their words. Everything I had once lost was growing again inside me. I found the strength within myself to rebuild who I am. More than being a stranger in my family's eyes, I had to rediscover myself. When I looked at myself, I sometimes noticed how indecisive my thoughts were. My family had meant everything to me. Gaining their approval gave me strength. But now I was a lost stranger in their eyes. Accepting this wasn't easy, but I had to accept it, 'cause I had to create my own identity all on my own. On one hand, I was determined to build my own life. But on the other hand, being alone in that cold house, it was truly such a terrifying feeling. With each passing day, I felt those cold walls closing in on me a little more. Without my mom and dad's love, without their care, I had to stand tall despite them. One night, the silence in the house grew so intense that I could hear the screams inside me. Tears streamed from my eyes, but this time it was different. There was anger within me. I swore to myself that I would rediscover my identity. Neither my mom nor my dad, nothing could stop me from this decision anymore. My eyes, even in that moment, looked determined to find my own path for the rest of my life. I was strong enough to achieve this. One evening, when I found my mom alone in the kitchen, I tried to suppress the anger inside me. I decided to talk to her one last time. Somehow, I needed to make her feel this emptiness. I needed to understand if I was still worth talking to in her eyes. But this time, it had to be different. There was no room for fear. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but the anger within me evident in every word. "Have you really become this distant? Why don't you explain to me why things are like this? What did I do to lose you so completely?" My mom took a deep breath and slowly turned her face toward me. There was exhaustion in her eyes. But then, as a void appeared in her gaze, she said, "Emma, there's no point in sharing this with you. To you, everything else matters more than me. I don't want to carry this burden anymore." Every word deepened the brokenness inside me. But at one point, I realized something. My mom and dad didn't actually want to abandon me. They were just blaming me for losing their own lives, seeing me as an obstacle because they had lost their own dreams. I shouldn't expect their love or their care anymore. I had to accept the pain inside me. I needed to find my own path now. Sometimes the greatest struggle doesn't come from others but from within ourselves. In this struggle, my biggest battle is with myself. My family had taught me everything throughout my life. But now I realize I have to live my own life on my own. I need to find my own identity. And I have to start doing that now. In that moment, in the silence of the house, I took control of my life. Everything I had once lost was now being reborn. I wouldn't blame anyone, not my mom, not my dad. I just needed to discover myself. I had to do everything my own way. To exist in my own life, to not have to answer to anyone. That was the greatest goal of my life. I had to accept it. 'Cause now I needed to think only of myself. Understanding my mom and dad's mistakes made me realize I shouldn't expect anything from them anymore. No matter how much I felt sorry for them, it was my responsibility to carve my own path and rebuild my life. That night, the words my mom said to me still echoed in my mind. To you, everything else matters more than me. That sentence marked the beginning of a turning point in my life. I finally realized that all these years of disappointments and pain had reminded me of my own worth. I had to take control of my own life. No one could teach me who I am or what I could achieve. The next morning, as I woke up, I felt a change within me. All those broken relationships with my family, the pain, and the feelings of loneliness no longer defined me. This time, I had to start doing things for myself. I needed to find my own identity, my dreams, and my goals. From now on, I had to live my life only for myself. One morning, I found Lily alone in her room again. I had to show her the determination in my eyes. I knocked on the door and walked in. Lily was looking at her computer, but this time I was determined to approach her. Inside me, I had decided not to stay silent with her anymore. "Lily," I said, my voice clear and resolute. "You never understood me. You've never understood me at all. But I'm not your burden anymore. So you're not an obstacle in my life either. I just need to find my own path now." Lily looked at me with surprise in her eyes. There was a long silence. Then she took a deep breath and said, "What do I have to do with you, Emma? You really don't understand." But this time I didn't feel anything. I just nodded and said, "Yes, Lily. I didn't understand. But I don't have to be like you anymore." That brought a sense of relief inside me. I no longer needed her judgments, her looks, or her disdain. I would find my own path and build my life despite them. When my eyes opened to the first light of the morning, the familiar silence filled the house once again. Nothing was as I once knew it. My bond with my family had been severed, but I realized something. I still couldn't find myself here. My journey to rebuild my identity was growing harder with each passing day. But this time, I wasn't afraid of losing. I had to take control of my life. Once, every corner of the house, every sound, every movement felt like it belonged to me. But now, everything was empty. I felt like a stranger. The fact that my relationship with my mom and dad had crumbled without any foundation deepened the emptiness inside me. But I had to set aside all these years of loss and start discovering who I truly was. And on this path, I would be alone. But perhaps being alone was the right decision. One morning, unexpectedly, I saw a short message from my mom. "I'm proud of you, but you have to leave." Something inside me broke. But on the other hand, it was as if the pain within me was, in a way, setting me free. I had to accept this. Whether my mom and dad loved me or understood me no longer mattered. I had to walk my own path. As challenging as this message was, it was, in fact, a new beginning in my life. In the end, I knew very well that I would be left alone. But inside me, I was growing stronger with each passing day. Sometimes losing, sometimes being abandoned, made a person realize just how strong they truly are. And now it was time to find my own path. Before, I thought everything depended on my mom and dad's approval. But now there was an awakening inside me. I had to build my own life. Coldness in my mom and dad's eyes no longer hurt me. While searching for my identity, I didn't have their love or approval. But perhaps I needed to accept this to find my own path. One day I saw my mom. I slowly approached her. It had been so long since we last spoke that there was a sense of estrangement between us. But there was a courage inside me. This time I had to speak no matter what. "Mom," I said, my voice a bit firm but calm, "do I really have to leave? Can't we start over together somehow?" My mom looked at me for a moment. Something flickered in her eyes. But then, as always, she lowered her voice and said, "Emma, I love you, but I don't understand you. After all this time, what can we really talk about?" In that moment, I realized my mom was truly lost. Neither I nor the old Emma could be found anymore. But maybe this was an opportunity for me. 'Cause after everything, I could be reborn. "Okay," I said. "Maybe I really do need to leave." The expression on my mom's face didn't change. But something was happening inside me. Every moment I thought they had abandoned me was actually helping me discover my own strength. I left the house. The emptiness in my eyes was slowly giving way to determination. I wanted to carve my own path, live a life that belonged to me, and find my identity without being tied to anyone. The world my mom and dad had offered me no longer belonged to me. I had accepted that. As I walked along the road, the air was cool. But inside me, there was a warmth. My journey had begun. From now on, I needed to focus not on others, but only on myself. My family, Lily, all of them were in the past. Now I had to start a life on my own. Waking up in a new city felt strange at first. This was a place where nothing belonged to me. I was alone, but by now, this loneliness was no longer foreign to me. Once it was something I feared and ran from, but now I was embracing it. Loneliness taught me to see things with new eyes, to hear my own voice, understand my feelings, and discover who I truly am. My first days were spent holed up in my room, thinking about the past. Chaos in my mind sometimes grew so overwhelming that even breathing felt difficult. But with each morning, I took another step, searching for a path to peace. And one morning, while sitting on a bench in the park, I made a decision. I had to recreate myself, explore the city, and lay the foundations for my new life. With each passing day, I felt a little more alone. But this loneliness had to envelop me, shape me. I didn't even know who I was, but this journey had brought me here. My mom, my dad, Lily, and everything left in the past were nothing more than silhouettes I had left behind on this journey. One morning, I truly stepped outside for the first time. I found a new cafe. As I walked in, I felt like I was stepping into a different world. People around me were living in their own worlds, seemingly lost in a time where nothing belonged to them. But here, I could be a part of something too. The woman at the cafe offered me a warm smile. "Welcome. What would you like?" she said. I was taken aback because it was the first time someone had shown me such direct interest. And in that moment, something shifted in my heart. Maybe this was a beginning. After learning my name, the woman asked, "Emma, are you new here?" I nodded slowly, a pang of bitterness in my heart. "Yes," I said. "I'm new. I moved to this city a few weeks ago. I'm actually looking for a change." The woman smiled faintly. "You found a good place. This cafe sometimes inspires the people who come here. Who knows, maybe you'll find inspiration here too." Inside, I felt that maybe this was the right place to start exploring this city. Though everyone was different, this little cafe brought people together. It wasn't just a place to me, it was offering a fresh start. The woman didn't tell me her name, but I started calling her Lena. Over time, I realized how much Lena helped me. She wasn't just an employee at a coffee shop. She also offered me different perspectives and made me think about life. One morning, while chatting with Lena, I realized there's a strength inside me. Truly, I was beginning to let go of the burdens of the past. With each passing day, I took another step forward, seeing the path ahead instead of looking back. Lena's words inspired me. Life might not always be in your control, but the one thing you can control is how you react to it. I thought deeply about the meaning of her words, because I had truly lost control of everything. But the way I reacted would determine my fate. The weight of the past would no longer drag me down. I had to take steps toward my future. As the days passed, Lena and I grew closer. She had gone through similar traumas as I had. Her relationship with her family was very much like mine. Understanding each other became easy. We could support one another. One day, while walking in the park, I told Lena about my past. I explained why my relationship with my family had become so fractured, recounting my last conversation with my mom. Lena listened quietly. After all this time, reconciling with them might be hard, she said. But maybe one day when you find your own path, they'll change too. Or maybe they don't need to change. Once you find your path, the meaning of everything will shift. Her words caused something to change within me. Maybe I didn't need to forgive the past. Maybe I just needed to make peace with it to stop being stuck on it. One morning, I shared a decision with Lena. This place is starting to feel like home. When I was lost, maybe I can be reborn here. Lena smiled. That's what will truly set you free. You've started discovering your identity, Emma. But don't forget, this is a journey. Your identity will reshape itself every day. These were things I hadn't heard before. When my journey began, I wasn't just a lost soul. I could exist anew. The emptiness inside me grew a little more with each passing day. Loneliness had become a familiar companion, but I still hadn't fully made peace with it. My past continued to haunt me. One morning, while walking in the park, I felt an urge to leave the city for a moment, to get away from everything, from everyone. But then Lena's words came to mind. Facing the darkness within is hard, but one day that darkness will illuminate you. The days I spent in the city began teaching me more and more. Every corner, every street held pieces of what I had once lost but now needed to find. I had to rebuild my life, but this wouldn't be an easy journey. One morning, I woke up and made a decision. I needed to confront my past. Last week, I had a short phone call with my mom, but it had been unpleasant. We were still angry with each other, struggling to enter each other's worlds. But this time, I would try to approach her with calmness. My heart started racing as I picked up the phone. I had to do this. I had to fill the emptiness inside me by setting aside the shadow of the past. I dialed the number. A few seconds later, my mom's familiar voice came through. "Emma? What's wrong?" "I just called you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I want to talk about a few things. If you're okay with it, we can talk now." Conversation was short, but something inside me shifted. There was a mix of longing and hurt, but there was also hope, an awareness. Perhaps I had waited too long to change and move forward. One day, while sitting with Lena after leaving the cafe, I shared the emotions I had been confronting. "My past keeps dragging me along," I said. "But now I think I need to face it." Lena listened calmly, as always. "Facing your past will set you free. But it's a process, don't rush it." "How can I be patient?" I asked, feeling a bit overwhelmed by the intensity of my emotions. "With time, when you make peace with this darkness, you'll realize how strong you are," she said. "And perhaps the greatest lesson of your past is that it's part of everything that makes you who you are." Her words sparked another thought in me. My past wasn't just a burden. Once I made peace with it, I would feel stronger. While sitting in the cafe, a new idea became clear in my mind. I needed to give myself a chance. I had always felt incomplete, but perhaps to become whole, I needed to give myself an opportunity. I began to slowly discover myself. Now I was focusing on the small things each day. It was raining outside, but I just watched the window, focusing on the rhythm of the falling drops. I never used to do this before. Now I could feel each moment a little more. Life was full of small moments, and I had been missing them. A week later, I met up with Lena. This time, I wanted to share more. Today, I realized something within myself, I said, unsure if I was smiling. I'm feeling less anger toward my past. I'm taking more responsibility. Lena saw the change in my eyes and smiled. Realizing that is wonderful. You're truly changing. Her words gave me strength because I had started to see a change in myself. Making peace with my past was maturing me. But at the same time, in the life I was rebuilding, I was moving forward one step at a time. One evening, while walking in the park, I noticed something. Over the past few weeks, I had only been trying to live quickly. I had been rushing to hold on to something to escape my past. But maybe I needed to slow down, to pause. I needed to listen to myself. This journey wasn't a race, it was a discovery. I sat on a bench and took a deep breath. The night breeze was blowing through my hair, but this time there was peace inside me. I was making peace with myself. This peace was a feeling I had lost for a very long time. The next morning, I spoke with my mom on the phone again. This time, the conversation went much more calmly. We listened to each other and managed to set aside our grievances. We acknowledged the mistakes of the past, but decided it was time to focus on the future. The emptiness inside me began to shrink in that moment. Maybe we can give each other more chances, my mom said, a faint smile detectable in her voice. Maybe, I said. We'll figure it out together. One morning, as the sun cast its first rays onto the city streets, Emma took a deep breath. Over the past few weeks, she had undergone a transformation she had never felt before. The darkness she carried within was slowly giving way to light. She felt stronger, more determined. She was making peace with her past, but something was still missing, the next step. That morning, as I walked to the park, I noticed how everything was slowly changing. Instead of a fast-paced life, I found more peace with every step. In the park, there was the scent of spring. Flowers had bloomed, and the trees were sprouting new leaves. Time seemed to slow down. There was hope inside me, but I still had fears. New beginnings were never easy, but perhaps I needed to give myself a chance. That afternoon, I ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in a long time, Sedef. When I left university years ago, my connection with Sedef had weakened. But now it felt like something was drawing me to her. Sedef, I said, surprised. Is that you? Sedef was, as always, energetic and cheerful. Emma, she exclaimed, laughing. Is it really you? It's been years since we last saw each other. At first, I felt a bit hesitant, but Sedef's warmth and smiling face put me at ease. We quickly started talking about old times, but this time it felt different. Something had changed. Sedef approached me in a way I hadn't noticed before. It was as if she could see the inner transformation I had gone through. How are you feeling, Emma? Sedef asked, a meaningful look on her face. I haven't been able to ask what's been going on with you for so long, but it looks like something's changed. A lot has changed, I said, taking a deeper breath. But there's still something inside me that feels incomplete. Sedef nodded and said, sometimes we have to keep moving forward even when things aren't fully complete. But exploring that emptiness inside you, touching it, is important. Give yourself permission. Sedef's words reminded me of what Lena had told me before. Confronting the past wasn't just about accepting it, it was also about understanding the lessons it brought. Moving forward on this path taught me not only to know myself but also to become a stronger person. Through talking with Sedef, I spent some time alone thinking. My past had always felt like a burden weighing me down. But maybe carrying that past was teaching me something. In that moment, I realized that just living in the present wasn't enough. I needed to accept the past and learn from it. The past hadn't made me who I was, I had. And perhaps that's why I was now the author of my own story. That evening, I met up with Lena. Now, compared to before, I listened to her more and shared more. "Lena," I said, taking a deep breath, "I ran into Sedef today. For the first time in years, I talked to her. But there was something different. She told me, making peace with your past means making peace not just with your past, but with your future too." Lena smiled. "How could I not notice the change in you? I think you're on the right path, Emma." She saw the transformation in my eyes. The strength growing inside me was becoming more palpable with each passing day. With Lena's support, I was becoming a braver person. A week later, as I lay in bed at night, I realized something. Giving myself a chance, despite all my flaws, had granted me a sense of freedom. Making peace with my past, accepting the pain it brought, and looking forward while doing so, I now understood how much strength that gave me. What would happen next was uncertain. But there was hope inside me. I knew that once I started accepting myself, everything could change. I had begun to trust myself, to look at life from a different perspective. The next morning, as I walked to the park, I was certain I'd feel even more at peace next time. Lena, Sedef, even my mom, together by supporting each other, we were helping our wounds heal. I was beginning a new chapter in my story, but this time as an Emma who had made peace with her past. The change within me was slow but profound. The emptiness inside me was filling up day by day, yet making peace with my shortcomings was an entirely different matter. Sometimes when I looked at myself, I felt like I couldn't quite see who I truly was. But that uncertainty was teaching me something. I was still tired. Walking in the shadow of the past, with memories echoing all around me, wasn't as easy as people might think. Yet with every step, I found a bit more light. Had I truly made peace? Or was I merely delaying my past and focusing on what lay ahead? That morning, I decided to go to the park. Spring was in the air outside. The scent of the earth, the innocent dance of the first flowers, all of it brought me peace. No matter how complicated life seemed, nature always simplified the chaos. But even a morning walk couldn't fully save me from the tangled emotions swirling in my mind. My steps slowed. I knew things weren't exactly going the way I wanted. Looking at my past, it wasn't hard to understand how deeply I felt the emptiness within me. They say everything happens for a reason. But sometimes knowing the reason wasn't enough. Sometimes, even if the traces of the past faded with time, the emotional scars remained. My days had been passing with a bit more clarity over the past few weeks, but there was still something I hadn't found peace with, something still incomplete. Finding that missing piece was proving to be very difficult. What was that emptiness? That afternoon, I met up with Lena. Talking with her had often brought me moments of joy. But this time, I felt I needed to have a more serious conversation. As I watched her sit beside me, I took a deep breath to confess the restlessness inside me. "Lena," I said, not hiding anything in my eyes, "lately I've been feeling an emptiness inside me. Making peace with the past, not fighting against it, might be the right path. But it feels like these internal changes have no end." Lena stayed silent for a moment. When her eyes met mine fully, something shifted. "Emma, sometimes change isn't instantaneous, it's a process. Past continues to live with you, but you don't have to let it define your identity. You can do more than just live in its shadow." "So what should I do?" I asked. my eyes drifting toward her with a bit more desperation. "What step should I take?" Lena smiled, and that smile told me something profound. The way to fill that emptiness isn't always about waiting for someone else. First, you need to give yourself a chance. As Lena's words echoed in my mind, I quickened my steps to finish my walk in the park. Giving myself a chance. But was I really ready for that? Giving myself a chance felt like a much harder step. Everyone kept telling me I was strong, but I didn't want to see the fragility within that strength. Maybe I was holding myself so tightly because I was afraid of losing again. With every step, the insecurity within me cast a larger shadow. The emptiness would always be there in some form, but accepting it as a companion could bring a greater sense of freedom. Lena's words had opened a door for me, but I was still afraid. One morning, I woke up with determination. The emotional burden I had carried until that day was now holding me back from moving forward. Breaking free from the effects of the past wasn't just a thought, it was an action. I felt I needed to take a step, even if it was a slow one. Today, I needed to make a new decision. A voice inside me was saying, "Let the change begin today." Breaking free from the shadow of the past wouldn't be easy, of course. But instead of carrying it as a burden, I needed to take it as a lesson. One evening, I ran into Sedef again. Talking with her made me feel the extent of my transformation even more clearly. "Sedef," I said slowly, "I finally realized something. Making peace with the past doesn't mean surrendering to it, it means moving forward with it." Sedef looked at me with a deep meaning in her eyes. "Yes, Emma. True freedom isn't about escaping the past, it's about accepting it." Suddenly, the storm inside me calmed a bit more. As I began to accept myself, the frightening reflection of the past started to harm me less. I felt stronger with each passing day. That night, before going to bed, I looked around my room. I knew everything wasn't perfect, but I still felt more at peace. On one hand, the echoes of the past were still there, but I was determined not to let them guide me anymore. I gave myself a chance, accepted my life, and learned to love my flaws. I realized that everything that made me who I am was a part of me. And that was a powerful feeling. One morning, I texted Lena. "Lena, I've finally made my decision. I'll keep confronting my past, but I won't get lost in it." Lena replied a few minutes later. "I love this, Emma. The past doesn't define you, you define it." Life was flowing faster with each passing day, but I was no longer resisting it. I was learning to flow with it. That night, as I drifted off to sleep, and before the first rays of morning light illuminated my eyes, there was a new peace within me. I had finally done what I should have done long ago. I made peace with my past. But the settling of that peace would take much longer than I had thought. One morning, as I woke up, I saw the sun slowly rising beyond my window. In that moment, I realized that everything wouldn't suddenly return to how it used to be. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Change was a process, and I was still in the midst of it. This morning, I felt that things would be different. A voice inside me was telling me I needed to take another step today. I had been setting a goal for myself every morning. But these goals were far different from forgetting the past or perfectly shaping the future. The answer to the question, "What should I do today?" was simple. Today, I needed to face the old me one last time and say goodbye. Knowing I'd meet Sedef later that day, my earlier thoughts were jumbling together in my mind. Was I really ready? This inner journey was becoming deeper and more complex. I took another step. Confronting the lasting traces of my past and letting them stay in my life, not by carrying them into the present, but by allowing them to remain just memories. When Sedef approached me, I recognized the expression on her face. There was a deep understanding in her eyes. "Emma," she said, watching me closely, "where are you heading? Do you think you can completely fill the emptiness inside you?" I stayed silent for a few seconds. I wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Took a moment to gather my thoughts. I don't know, Sedef, but I feel like I'm on the right path right now. I don't want to keep chasing my past or carry it like a burden forever. I need to say goodbye to it somehow. Sedef nodded, a smile in her eyes as she replied, I love that, Emma. I really do. Saying goodbye to the past might just be true freedom. Sedef's words brought more clarity to my mind. The only way to settle things with my past wasn't to stay stuck on it, it was to bid it farewell. Reshaping my life wasn't about living with the traces of the past, but stepping over them as I moved forward. With every step, I was shedding a bit more of the weight of my past. But this wasn't just about being strong. True strength lay in accepting oneself, in realizing that mistakes and losses were part of life. I needed to embrace the lessons my past had taught me, my doubts, my fears, and heal them. That evening, I met a man at a cafe by chance. His face seemed familiar, but I couldn't place him. The man smiled shyly and said, Emma, I'm sure you recognize me. I'm Kerem. First, I was a bit surprised. But then I noticed the inner peace in his gaze. Sometimes a person's inner calm can radiate as powerfully as it feels. Kerem, I don't think I remember, I said, though my voice didn't fully convey ignorance. Deep down, I felt like I knew him somehow. Kerem stepped closer and smiled. You don't know me, and maybe you never will. But the other day when I saw you, I noticed something in your eyes. There was a depth. It was as if the peace within you was shaping the world around you. Kerem's words echoed in my mind. Meeting someone with a similar inner peace in my life was a huge surprise. Encountering him felt like a sign. Perhaps starting anew began with accepting that the past was merely a teacher. Our conversation at the cafe flowed effortlessly. Kerem told me about his own life, how he had faced hardships but managed to overcome them. Sometimes life takes you back to where your journey began, he said. But that only helps you grow. If you don't return there, it means you're not brave enough. Everything he said reminded me of things I'd heard before. I realized how important it was to take that step. Past shouldn't define you, you should define it. I talked with Kerem for a long time, and the courage I gained from him carried me as I left the cafe. I took another step. Every burden the past had brought was making me more mature, but I couldn't let it slowly tear me down either. I needed to keep moving forward. True freedom wasn't about being chained to either the past or the future. Owning the present moment was the greatest act of courage. The biggest goal I set for myself was to accept the traces of my past and make peace with them, but never let myself get stuck on them. Finally, I met up with Lena. I turned to her slowly and said, Lena, I've finally accepted my past, but I'm not clinging to it anymore. Now I'm walking my own path. Lena took a deep breath. I'm so happy to hear that, Emma. You've taken control of your life with your own hands. That's true change. My life was changing a little more with each passing day. Facing my past was slowly clearing the obstacles in my path. The old Emma, whom I once feared and tried to escape from, was now becoming less visible. The new me was making peace with the shadows of the past while reshaping herself toward the future. But there was still something, a lingering uncertainty about what would come next. At sunrise, in the silence of the morning, I opened the window and looked outside for a moment. I realized that the things I used to fear no longer scared me. After all these years, life hadn't just offered me lessons. It had also given me the chance to become a stronger person. The clarity in my eyes carried a peace I couldn't find before but now felt meaningful in everything. Yet, I still needed to take another step to fully discover myself, to find my true identity. Loneliness was no longer my enemy. It was giving me the chance to explore inner peace. What made me was being able to feel the depth of every emotion. That day, I met up with Lena. Our conversations always helped me find the truth. Lena, I said, sometimes the challenges we face show us how strong we are, but also how we learn to let go. Lena smiled. Yes, Emma. Letting go of the past and future anxieties is true freedom. But don't forget, it's always a journey. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and ask ourselves, who am I? But true identity is found step by step. Her words left a deep echo within me. Discovering who we are wasn't just about leaving the past behind, it was about accepting the present in every moment. There was no fear, only a journey. And every journey promised to find light after the darkest moments. As I became aware of this inner transformation, I realized that everything was taking shape through small steps. That day, I met up with Kerem. Though I had only met him a few days ago, this man had given me the courage to explore the more meaningful aspects of my life. Kerem's words resonated within me. Sometimes the people who change you come into your life to help you become the best version of yourself. While talking with him, I noticed something I hadn't before. When I was with someone I truly connected with, the peace inside me deepened even more. This gave me the opportunity to explore another aspect of life, one I hadn't considered as important before: connection. The time I spent with Kerem, though brief, added so much to my life. He helped me embrace the darker sides of life instead of running from them. Don't look back, Emma, he said one day. Life requires constant progress and growth. The past can be a key to open the door to your future, but it's the present that gives you freedom. His words made me realize that the past didn't have to define who I am. I could simply allow it to be a teacher on my journey. This was Emma's rebirth. I made peace with my past, but I didn't carry it as a burden in my life. I had achieved that. As my inner journey neared its end, I woke up one morning feeling true peace. I opened my eyes and realized that neither the past nor the future could shape me anymore. Today, the present was the essence of everything. Only by finding my inner balance could I see how rich and profound life could truly be. The shadows of my past were now just memories. What made me me were the lessons I had taken from those moments. The meaning of everything lay in the present. Past had been a teacher, but I had to be the one to steer my life. With this realization, I made one final promise to myself. My life would be shaped by my choices. And with every choice, I would move forward, embracing only peace and inner balance. At last, I discovered the true meaning of freedom. It wasn't just about casting aside the stones of the past. It was also about making peace with today and tomorrow. Everything was a journey, a learning process. Challenges and mistakes could reveal the depth of inner strength, but the real gain came from learning from them and continuing on the path. My friendships with Kerem, Lena, Sadaf, and others showed me how precious life is. 'Cause each person reminded me that life is merely a journey. And the most beautiful thing was embracing this journey and finding my inner freedom. For the first time in my life, I felt the peace within me harmonize with the outside world. The moment I found myself was the moment everything truly began. By embarking on a journey fueled not by the traces of my past but by my present, I was making a new beginning. I took a step and found true freedom,